Yo, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today at the 7-game series up in northeastern Canada between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know how to start this video, but let's get through this series. So, in game one, going into this series, this was a great opportunity for the Toronto Maple Leafs, they were playing a team in the Montreal Canadiens they haven't seen in over 40 years, and the Habs kind of limped their way into the postseason. If it weren't for a bad season for teams like Vancouver, Calgary, and Ottawa, they may have had to actually fight their way to the playoffs this year. For the Maple Leafs, they win the division by a long shot, and they kind of dominated down the stretch. They picked up Nick Foligno at the trade deadline. They acquired guys like TJ Brodie and Wayne Simmons last offseason, Zach Bogosian in free agency, and it looked like the Leafs were destined to finally get something going. Going into game one in Toronto, it was a pretty good game, a good back-and-forth game between both sides. But Josh Anderson would get the first goal for the Montreal Canadiens, making it 1-0 in the first period, kind of setting the tone. William Nylander would score for the Leafs in the second period. He had an unbelievable series. This would be his first goal of, an insight to what he would do later on in the series. And then with less than 10 minutes to go, the Toronto Maple Leafs are on the power play. And Paul Byron of the Montreal Canadiens scores a shorthanded goal. Kind of looked like a semi-breakaway. Puts it past Jack Campbell, 2-1, and the Leafs would not respond for the rest of that game. And the Montreal Canadiens go into Toronto and steal game one. Kind of shocking. Now we go into game two, and the Leafs dominate. They put up a big number, a 5-1 victory on the Toronto Maple Leafs, Montreal Canadiens. I can't even talk. But it was Suzuki Kotkaniemi getting his first of the postseason. He got the first goal in that game, but then it was 5 unanswered goals by the Toronto Maple Leafs, which gave them the victory. So guys like Jason Spezza, Austin Matthews, Rasmus Sandin, Nylander getting his second of the season, and Alexander Kerfoot. That adds up to 5, and it was a 5-1 victory in game number 2. So now in game 3, the Habs are back home. They win these 2 games at home. They could have the Leafs up against the wall going into game 6, or into game 5 for that matter. So this was game 6. Yeah. So that would make things interesting. So now we've got this game. Starts off kind of slow. No goals in the first period, but the second period things definitely picked up. William Nylander gets his third of the postseason. Really good series. He scored in each of the first 3 games of the series. Nick Suzuki gets a goal, and Morgan Riley with the game winner, and it's 2-1 Leafs. So the Leafs, let's be honest, this is a pretty good game for them because now you're winning a game in a tight scoring matchup. You didn't just blow out the Habs like you did in the second game. You won a tight 2-1 scoring game. Now Jack Campbell in the past 2 games has only given up 1 goal each game. That's pretty solid defense by the Leafs and good goaltending. So now we go into game 4, and the Leafs hammer it on the Canadiens. Nylander scores his 4th of the postseason, leading the way for the Leafs at this point. Jason Spezza scores. Joe Thornton scores. And Alex Galchenyuk, the former Hab, and it's a 4-0 win for the Leafs. So it looks like now going into game 6, they should be able to take game 5, they should be able to take this series at home. The Leafs looked like they had dominated. The Habs were being outplayed. And then game 5 happened. So game 5 was another pretty solid game by the Montreal Canadiens. We've seen them do this early on in games, and they did it again here. They scored first again. Yoel Armia scores his first and second of the postseason, just over 4 minutes apart, and Yoel Armia gets his first and second. Suzuki Kotkaniemi, his second of the postseason, makes it 3-0 Habs during the second period. Zach Hyman would cut the lead to make it 3-1. Then we saw Jake Muzzin score 2 goals in the third period, tie the game up, and then less than a minute into overtime, Nick Suzuki scores his second of the postseason, a huge turnaround moment for Le Canadiens de Montreal. And this was the game that set the precedent for the rest of the way for this series. Had the Leafs won that game in overtime, we don't talk about this series, and the Habs didn't play that well. Carey Price wasn't at his best. But then this Nick Suzuki goal happened, and everything changed from there. Now we go into Game 6 in Montreal. The Canadiens are back home now, and they have an opportunity to put this thing to a Game 7 and put the Leafs up against the wall and give them a lot of pressure in the mecca of hockey in Game 7. But they still had to win Game 6. Carey Price would get his first of the postseason. Tyler Toffoli, his first of the postseason. It would be 2-0 Habs early on, but the Leafs would come back in that third period. Again, all these goals were in the third period, mind you. So it's 2-0 Habs. And then Jason Spezza and TJ Brodie. So the defensemen, it was Jake Muzzin last game, now TJ Brodie. And we have a tie game at 2 going to overtime. But the overtime magic comes back to the Montreal Canadiens. Just a little over 15 minutes into the third period. Suzuki and Kotkaniemi with 15 minutes and 15 seconds into the third period, the 15th shot of that overtime, and number 15 playing his 15th minute of ice time. Suzuki and Kotkaniemi, the big 15 in Game 6. This thing is going back to the mecca of hockey for Game 7 with the Leafs' backs against the wall. Now, this is the first game that the Leafs have had fans in attendance since March of 2020, and they finally get that little bit of an edge back for their home ice advantage in an enormous Game 7. No goals in the first period, a goalie battle between Jack Campbell and Carey Price. We start to see Carey Price start to go to the next level, and he became a problem as the series wore on. Brendan Gallagher would get the first of this game with 3 minutes into the second period. And then we wouldn't see another goal until the last 5 minutes of the second period, where Carey Price gets his second of the postseason. And this game now going into the third period, 2-0 Habs. The Leafs have their backs against the wall. Tyler Toffoli would score his second of the postseason as the empty netter with just a little less than 3 minutes left in regulation. William Nylander would continue his unbelievable playoff success, his 5th goal of the postseason with just under 2 minutes left in regulation. But it was too little, too late, as the Montreal Canadiens have absolutely stunned not only Toronto, but they have stunned the entire hockey world. The Montreal Canadiens did probably the unthinkable. You're down 3-1 to the Toronto Maple Leafs. You lost both those games at home, right? Because they won the first game in Toronto. They lost Game 2 in Toronto, and they lost Game 3 and 4 in Montreal. So there was no way they were going to come back and win this series. They would have had to win 2 games in Montreal, 2 games in Toronto, and 1 in Montreal. And they did exactly that. They did the unthinkable. And you got to give credit. Nick Suzuki scoring a couple goals. Suzuki and Kotkaniemi scoring an overtime game winner. This Montreal Canadiens team reminds me a lot of the New York Islanders. A team that everybody doubts. They doubt them all the time. And they come in and they play their game, and they didn't look that phased by the Leafs and their talent and their skill and their speed. And even down 3-1 in that series, you have to give Dominic Ducharme some credit, because the way he was able to get those guys up for those last 3 games. And I hate to say it, coaching might have been the difference in this series. And I know Leaf fans would hate to hear that, but let's be honest, this was a great job by Ducharme getting this Habs team in there. Give some credit to Carey Price. You heard a couple times Austin Matthews some very vocal frustration of, am I ever going to score again? This was a really tough series for them. Austin Matthews got only 1 goal this series. William Nylander, who was paid the least out of everybody in that forward core, scored 5 goals, making $6.9 million per season. Austin Matthews making 11.5. John Tavares making 11. We know what happened with Tavares. And Nylander, he didn't score a goal in this series. So it's one of those things. It's frustrating. And not to mention your backup goaltender who's making $5 million, Freddie Anderson. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's been a really frustrating, honestly, even as an Islander fan, I watch the Leafs and it's like, what are they doing? And I don't even want to get this far down the rabbit hole, but the Islanders, John Tavares left the New York Islanders, right, to win championships. The Leafs have won 1 playoff series, maybe 2, since John Tavares got there. The Islanders have won at least 4 or 5, maybe even 6 playoff series since John Tavares left the Islanders. Just saying, just throwing that out there. I know Leafs fans are going to hate that, but that's the truth. And for the Habs, give the Habs a ton of credit. Like I said, Carey Price was unstoppable at the end of that series, and you got to give some credit to the management. They were able to get these guys up for these games, and really, we saw the difference. I mean, guys like Corey Perry getting on the board, Tyler Toffoli, those are all moves that Mark Bergevin made. And now the Happy Meal heads up to Winnipeg to take on the Winnipeg Jets, who have been well rested and ready to go. And that next series starts tomorrow. So, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL and more videos just like this one, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys next time.